In the theatre of professional sport, we often mistake momentum for destiny. We believe that when a player has done enough, the universe, the scoreboard, and the course itself must comply. But the ancient links of Carnoustie, Scotland, hold no such sentimentality. They demand respect until the final ball drops. The year was 1999, and the air was thick with the scent of sea salt and impending history. This was the 128th renewal of the Open Championship, arguably the purest test in the gentleman's game. A relatively unknown Frenchman, Jean van der Velde, had navigated the brutal challenge of Carnoustie better than any man in the field for 3.5 days. He possessed a 3-stroke cushion, walking onto the 18th tee on Sunday afternoon. 3 strokes, a margin that on most courses is reserved for processions, not contests. The trophy was, for all intents and purposes, his. The European continent held its breath, fueled by hope. They anticipated the coronation of a new champion, an unlikely hero claiming the Claret Jug. Yet golf delights in shattering expectation. What unfolded on that final treacherous hole was not merely a loss of form, but a complete seismic collapse of nerve, strategy, and certainty. It was an event so sudden and so profound that it instantly became enshrined in the lore of the major championships. A true sporting tragedy. We are not talking about a missed 3-foot putt for the win. We are speaking of a series of decisions that transformed a victory march into a desperate scramble, costing van der Velde 3 strokes and forcing him into an agonizing 4-hole playoff against the steely precision of Paul Lawrie and Justin Leonard. This is the story of how the ultimate prize was surrendered, a cautionary tale of hubris, water hazards, and the cruel, unforgiving nature of the 72nd hole. The final chapter of the Open Championship 1999 remains one of the most confounding and debated moments in golf history. Before we dive into the minute-by-minute details of that disastrous final hole, I must ask, when you reflect upon this moment, what was the single emotion that defined this sporting collapse for you? Was it shock, or was it simply the inevitable consequence of tempting fate? Comment your theory here below. It was July of 1999, and the ancient, unforgiving sod of Carnoustie was baking under a rare Scottish sun. This was the Open Championship, the oldest and arguably the most brutal test in the gentleman's game. Carnoustie demands precision, punishes the faint of heart, and often reduces the world's best to mere mortals searching for their ball in the gorse. On that fateful Sunday afternoon, the drama was not manufactured by the familiar giants. No Golden Bear chasing history, no Tiger Woods asserting dominance. Instead, the spotlight settled, almost cruelly, upon a talented, though largely unheralded Frenchman, Jean van der Velde. Van der Velde had played 3 days of near-perfect golf, navigating the treacherous bunkers of doom and the swirling winds with the composure of a seasoned veteran. As he approached the 18th tee, the last obstacle in his quest for the coveted Claret Jug, he held a commanding 3-stroke lead, 3 strokes. In the calculus of championship golf, that is not a margin for error, it is a coronation waiting to happen. History tells us that only the most catastrophic collapse could snatch victory from his grasp. Yet golf is a sport defined by entropy, the slow, inevitable slide toward disorder, especially when the finish line is in sight. The 18th at Carnoustie is a masterpiece of finishing holes, defined by the serpentine curves of the Barry Burn, a stream that appears less like a hazard and more like a river of psychological torture. The first hint of unease arrived with the tee shot. A driver blocked slightly right but safe enough. The real question, the one that would haunt him for the rest of his days, came on the second shot. With a 3-shot lead, the conventional wisdom, the wisdom passed down through generations of links golf, demanded prudence. A simple iron layup leaving a short pitch shot over the burn would guarantee a bogey 5 and, critically, the championship. But the human mind, under the pressure of imminent glory, often miscalculates risk. Like a general who presses an unnecessary attack when peace is imminent, Van der Velde chose aggression. He pulled out the 2-iron, aiming for the green 200 yards away. The resulting shot, which clipped the grandstand and caromed into the thick, punishing rough near the burn, was the sound of destiny shifting. The silence of the crowd was immediate and profound. The air itself seemed to thicken with tragic inevitability. Then came the moment of genuine madness, a decision so baffling it has become a case study in athletic choke artistry. Faced with an impossible lie, rather than taking a penalty drop or carefully hacking it back into the fairway, he attempted to play the ball from the thick tangle of gorse. It splashed ignominiously into the Barry Burn. The sight of Van de Velde, trousers rolled high, wading into the stream to contemplate his next move, a move he wisely abandoned, is the defining image of that Open. It was the moment the gentleman's game turned profoundly cruel. He took the drop, pitched onto the green and two-putted for a triple-bogey 7. The three-stroke lead had vanished in the span of 7 strokes. The collapse was complete. The championship was thrown into a three-way playoff with Justin Leonard and the eventual quiet victor Paul Lawrie, who had started the day 10 shots back. Laurie's victory, a testament to steady play while others faltered, is often overshadowed by the sheer drama of Van de Velde's implosion. And there is one more detail you cannot imagine, a final touch of almost unbearable irony. After signing his card, the card that confirmed the triple-bogey 7, Van de Velde walked off the 18th green and embraced the moment, smiling, almost laughing. It was a mask of stoicism, perhaps, or the sheer relief that the mental torment was momentarily over. He had lost the Open, not to the brilliance of an opponent, but to the psychological landmines planted by the course and by the pressure of history. It was a brutal reminder that in championship golf, one must not merely play the course, one must defeat the self. Van de Velde proved that a 3-shot lead is only as secure as the nerves of the man holding the club. His moment of glory became the ultimate cautionary tale, a legend whispered around the 19th hole about the course that refused to be conquered. For more stories that molded the spirit of this sport and the men who dared to challenge it, consider joining us again. We'll see you at the next tee. The year was 1999. The venue, Carnoustie, a links course designed not just to test skill but to punish presumption. It is a place where the ghosts of champions past whisper warnings on the wind, a course so demanding it earned the moniker Carnoustie. For 3 days, a relatively unknown figure, the Frenchman Jean Van de Velde, had navigated this brutal landscape with the cool efficiency of a seasoned major champion. Van de Velde was an anomaly, not a household name, not a member of the established golfing aristocracy, yet here he was, staring down the final holes of the Open Championship, holding the coveted 3-stroke lead. This was not merely a comfortable advantage, it was, by the immutable laws of probability in professional golf, a declaration of victory. As he stood on the 18th tee on that Sunday afternoon, the Claret Jug was virtually secured. Statistically, a 3-stroke lead on the 72nd hole of a major is an impossibility to lose. It is the equivalent of a chess grandmaster having a queen and 2 rooks against a lone king. All that was required was prudence, caution, the safe haven of a 5-iron, laying up short of the trouble, ensuring a tidy bogey 5, perhaps even a par 4. The score of 73, a triple bogey, was the maximum he could afford to tie. But golf, this gentleman's game defined by patience, often rewards the brave until it decides to brutally punish the reckless. Van de Velde chose to attack. He chose the driver, a club designed for distance, not diplomacy. The choice of the driver on the 18th at Carnoustie, with the infamous Barry Burn lurking, remains one of the greatest unforced errors in the history of the sport. It was a catastrophic failure of calculation, a surrender to the intoxicating, yet ultimately destructive, allure of glory. His first shot was wild, bounding off the grandstand and into the deep rough down the right side. The second shot, still chasing distance, attempted to carry the notorious out-of-bounds area and found the knee-high fescue grass near the bank of the Barry Burn. The true descent, however, began with the third shot. Standing 90 yards from the pin, he needed only a delicate wedge to secure his par, or a cautious pitch to ensure the winning bogey. Instead, he pulled a 7-iron, aiming for the green, and in doing so, gambled his entire week's work. The ball struck the unforgiving stone wall protecting the bank and ricocheted backward, splashing into the murky depths of the Barry Burn. The scene that followed is burned into the collective memory of every golf enthusiast watching worldwide. The Frenchman, removing his socks and shoes, climbing down into the icy water, contemplating a heroic, yet utterly foolish attempt to play the ball from the stream. He lingered there, water up to his knees, while the entire golfing world held its breath. It was a tragicomic ballet performed on the edge of sporting immortality. The delay, the contemplation, the sheer psychological pressure of realizing the magnitude of the error, it all compounded the mistake. He eventually took the drop, pitched out, and ultimately needed a triple bogey 7 just to reach the clubhouse and force a playoff. The ultimate irony of this collapse lies not just in the watery grave of his third shot, but in the internal rush that overtook him. He had days to methodically build the lead, but mere moments to lose control of his strategic mind. And there is one more detail you cannot imagine. Had he simply taken a penalty drop after his initial wild drive into the rough, accepted the loss of a stroke, and pitched his third shot conservatively, accepting a bogey 5, he still would have won the Open outright. The aggression on the 18th was wholly unnecessary. The title was already his. He had succumbed to the final, most brutal test of the gentleman's game, managing the lead, managing the ego, and managing the course that refuses to yield easy victories. He lost the subsequent 4-hole playoff to the steady, unflappable hand of the Scotsman Paul Lawrie, who birdied the last 2 holes. Jean van der Velde did not lose the 1999 Open. He surrendered it. It remains the definitive, agonizing illustration of golf's cruel axiom. The course does not care about your lead. It only cares about your next shot. A 3-stroke lead, dissolved in the span of 30 minutes. A devastating lesson in the terrible fragility of hope and the psychological toll exacted when a legendary course decides to reclaim its trophy. For more stories of the triumphs and heartbreaks that define this enduring game, consider joining us as we explore the annals of championship history. We'll see you at the next tee. The year 1999 was meant to be defined by triumph, yet for many, it remains synonymous with a singular, agonizing moment of sporting cruelty. We journey now to the rugged east coast of Scotland, to Carnoustie, a venue so demanding it earned the moniker Carnoustie. This course, unforgiving and exposed to the biting North Sea wind, does not grant titles. They must be earned through suffering. Standing against the elements and against the heavy expectations placed upon the game's established titans was Jean van der Velde. The elegant Frenchman, not known for consistent major contention, had played 4 days of near-perfect, disciplined golf. As he approached the final tee on Sunday, the Claret Jug, perhaps the most coveted prize in the gentleman's game, was virtually his. Van der Velde enjoyed a 3-stroke lead. In the grand calculus of championship golf, a 3-shot cushion on the 72nd hole is statistically an impossibility to squander. It is the ultimate safety net, the equivalent of a mountaineer having 3 safety ropes attached near the summit. Yet golf, unlike nearly every other sport, demands a psychological fortitude that defies mere arithmetic. The weight of guaranteed victory often crushes the hand that reaches for it. It is a phenomenon athletes call choking, but we prefer the term a profound loss of composure under the gaze of history. The 18th at Carnoustie, a par 4 of daunting length, is protected by the snaking menace of the Barry Burn. Van der Velde needed only a double bogey, a 6, to win outright. Prudence dictated a safe iron off the tee, keeping the Barry Burn at bay, avoiding any flirtation with disaster. Instead, perhaps driven by an excess of confidence, or perhaps by a sudden paralyzing fear of failure that demanded an aggressive resolution, he pulled the driver. The decision was the first seismic crack in his fortress. The drive strayed right, finding the rough. His subsequent approach shot, intended to lay up safely, struck the grandstand railing, launching the ball backwards across the unforgiving, hard Scottish turf and into the high, tangled grass surrounding the Barry Burn. The silence from the gallery, a dense crowd that had gathered in anticipation of celebration, was deafening. It was the sound of fate taking a cruel, decisive turn. What followed is one of the most indelible images in the annals of golf history. Instead of taking a penalty drop, the Frenchman surveyed his lie. He removed his shoes and socks, rolled up his trousers, and waded into the cold water of the Barry Burn, contemplating a heroic yet foolish recovery shot. It was a momentary lapse into theatre, a defiant gesture against the inevitable, an attempt to bargain with the golfing gods. Ultimately, he wisely took the drop, but the physical and mental damage was done. After punching out, he found the bunker. The ensuing triple-bogey 7 tied him with Paul Lawrie and Justin Leonard. The 3-shot lead had evaporated in 12 agonizing minutes, a psychological implosion that rivals any collapse in major championship history. It is a profound lesson in the razor-thin margin between immortality and infamy. The gentleman's game rewards patience and punishes hubris with equal fervor. We remember his courage, his elegance, and the stark visual of him standing in the burn, a man wrestling with the very soul of the sport. And there is one more detail you wouldn't imagine. The cruelest twist of all was not the collapse itself, but the nature of the ensuing 4-hole playoff. The psychological trauma of the 7 had left Van der Velde utterly spent, running on the fumes of desperation. Paul Lawrie, who had begun the final round an astronomical 10 strokes behind the lead, played the playoff with the smooth, unflappable precision of a man gifted a second chance by the golfing gods. Lawrie won decisively, completing the largest final round comeback in major championship history. Van de Velde's moment of destiny became a footnote in Laurie's crowning achievement. The tale of Carnoustie 1999 serves as a timeless reminder that no lead is truly safe until the final putt has fallen into the cup. Those who witnessed it, those who watched the hope drain away from the Frenchman's eyes, will never forget the raw, untamed power of the Open Championship. For more deep dives into the majors that defined generations and the heroes who chased glory, consider joining us next time. We'll save you a chair by the fire. We'll see you at the next tee. It was Carnoustie 1999. The air hung cold and heavy off the North Sea. This ancient links course, often dubbed Carnoustie for its merciless design, had systematically dismantled the world's best over 4 punishing days. For those who understand the relentless nature of the Scottish seaside, the wind is not merely an inconvenience, it is a profound moral challenge. And yet, through the relentless attrition, a relatively unknown Frenchman, Jean van der Velde, had emerged. A man of flair, perhaps, but certainly not a figure widely expected to carry the weight of an Open Championship on his shoulders. He was poised to become the first Frenchman to hoist the Claret Jug since Arnaud Massy in 1907. History beckoned. As he arrived at the 72nd tee on Sunday, the stage was set for coronation. Van der Velde held a seemingly unassailable 3-stroke cushion. In the crucible of a major championship, this was not merely a lead. It was, statistically speaking, a certainty. 99 times out of 100, the trophy was already being polished for him. The strategy was clear, simple, and elegant. Manage the hole, avoid the notorious Barry Burn, the serpentine stream that wraps around the green, and walk to victory. But golf, the most psychological of all sports, reserves its greatest cruelties for the one remaining possibility. Psychologists often refer to this specific tension as paralysis by overanalysis. The moment the subconscious, trained for years to execute a perfect swing, is fatally overridden by the conscious mind, which is suddenly calculating every catastrophic outcome. It is akin to trying to breathe manually. The simplest, most ingrained act becomes impossibly complex. Van der Velde, needing only a double bogey 6 to claim immortality, faced a decision that would haunt him forever. His tee shot, though slightly aggressive, found the fairway. The prudent play, the winning play, was a mid-iron short of the Barry Burn, followed by a simple pitch onto the green and 2 putts for a comfortable 5. Instead, a voice whispered promises of glory, urging him to attack the green with his 2-iron. The risk was monumental, the reward unnecessary. The result was a disastrous deflection off the grandstand support and into the deep, gorse-laden rough. From there, the wheels came off with a chilling inevitability. The second shot, a reckless attempt to find the green, ricocheted horrifically off the stone retaining wall of the Barry Burn, splashing into the murky water. The crowd noise, which moments earlier had been a low, supportive hum, vanished. It was replaced by a collective, horrified gasp that echoed the solemnity of a funeral procession. The image is one of the most indelible in the history of the game. Van der Velde, removing his shoes and socks, rolling up his trousers, wading into the burn, considering the impossible. A moment of tragicomic theatre that belied the monumental stakes. He considered hitting the ball from the water, a desperate act of defiance against fate, before ultimately taking the sensible, though devastating drop. He pitched his 5th shot into the deep greenside bunker, his 6th found the green, and finally, under the unbearable pressure of having watched his dream evaporate, he holed a 7-foot putt for a triple-bogey 7. The 3-stroke lead, the certainty of glory, had vanished into thin air. The ensuing 3-man playoff, involving Van der Velde, Justin Leonard, and the eventual champion Paul Lawrie, felt like an afterthought. The spirit of the champion had been broken on the 72nd green. Lawrie, playing brilliantly from the shadows, claimed the jug. But history remembers the drama, not always the score. Van der Velde's implosion remains the benchmark for competitive collapse in the modern era, a stark reminder that in this gentleman's game, the greatest opponent is often the self. It proved that even when the physical game is flawless, the mental fortress can be breached by the sheer overwhelming weight of expectation. It was a victory lost not to a better player, but to the crushing gravity of the moment itself. For more stories that capture the fragile genius and profound history of this sport, consider subscribing and sharing your memories of that unforgettable Sunday at Carnoustie in the comments below. We shall see you on the next tee.